Yeah, I can't do that. Like, minging toilets really bog me out. I'm like a princess like that.
I would happily.
But did that work, by the way?
Yeah, it's working now.
Okay.
Yeah. I would happily shit anyway if I was desperate. If you're desperate, you'd be
Oh
a
yeah,
bit of
if
a
I was
princess.
different if you're desperate. But if I'm just going to the toilet and it's just fucking gross, I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna not go, but I'm like, oh, you do better. Like whoever's toilet's that bad is like, mate. It was like one of the comps I've been to. I'm definitely not saying where it was. Had no toilet seat. Like the man's toilet, no toilet seat. The door was the. Oh yeah, so you're lucky. You're on the podcast. That's good. So this gym I went to had no toilet seat, no toilet paper. The door was like a cabin door. It was wooden, like definitely just made it, and it was locked with like those like hooks to hook over.
Oh.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I was just like, what the fuck? So yeah, that's not my ideal toilet. But
Do you ever have you ever had to like go so bad you've had to just do it in nature?
no,
Never.
no, never, literally never.
No.
I guess you have, given you asked the question.
Quite recently, actually.
Did you?
Yeah, about 6 months ago.
Just like out for a walk, needed a shit, and then went.
Had a curry the night before. Drained here. Went home. Had like a raspberry. So for maybe a raspberry and blueberry smoothie. Went for my walk. Halfway through my walk, I was like, "Whoa, I've got a bit of a bad belly." Started like walking home, and we live near a train station. And as I was walking home, I was like walking quite fast. The fucking things started coming down. You stood there for about 10 minutes sometimes, and there's a forest to the right. So I went into the forest, actually grabbed a tree, pulled my pants down, squatted down, and just exploded all over the floor.
Really?
Yeah,
No wiping or
I tried with a leaf, but it was disgusting.
bro? That's like I won't even camp. So like
Yeah,
that's
insane. I
yeah.
love camping. Sure, I can't. I think I need to take you camping.
No, I tell you how I go camping. Right, is if it was a nice day, if I had something nice to sleep on, if I had a toilet to go to and a shower, so glamping essentially, and then I would do it. But I tell you what has inspired me. I started watching this YouTube channel called the Outdoor Boys, and it's like a camping thing, and he's really good at camping, and he explains things, and he's quite entertaining in a really strange way. And I said to Saf, I was like, I'm going to go camping solo, and I'm just going to copy him. But I'm a bit like,
It's cool.
pressure. That's why I've never been to. Like, think how much I love music and all these like gigs I go to. I've never been to a festival, and it's because of that, the camping and like the hygiene around it. It's just like honestly, it makes my skin want to just like go. Ugh.
When you're there, you just don't care.
I think it would ruin it for me.
What? So you wouldn't be able to do like wet wipe shower? No.
No, I shower twice a day, every day, without fail, and then three times
Twice
a
a
day.
day?
Yeah, morning.
Wow.
Can't leave the house without showering, and I can't go to bed not showering because if I feel even remotely sticky, I can't relax.
I shower in the evening, but never in the morning. I wash my face in the morning.
Yeah.
But that's it. That's wow. That's really.
Yeah.
So has anything put you off? Like, have you experienced anything that?
No. Like there's literally, well, there probably is, but like I don't think there's anything that's happened. It's just when you get out of the shower and you're like, oh, I feel clean.
Best feeling ever.
Exactly, and I think I'm a bit addicted to that. And if I sweat a little bit, then I'm like, and I feel sticky. I'm like, ugh, and I get triggered by smells.
Oh, do you?
Yeah,
When
yeah.
you say triggered, what do you mean by that?
Oh, just like I just can't concentrate. So if you smelt now, there's no way I'd be able to do this podcast. I wouldn't be able to concentrate.
Really?
Yeah, all I'd be thinking is just like breathe through your mouth, don't inhale, don't smell. And if you smelt, I'd be thinking he fucking stinks. And I'd be like, why does he smell so bad? Is he oblivious to his smell?
Yeah, I always
like,
think that.
Yeah, and like it just really like bogs me out. I can tolerate. Don't get me wrong, I can tolerate it. Like I work in a gym. I can tolerate it, but it just really like makes me feel awkward, and I just can't I can't concentrate that well.
I was on the cusp of having a really awkward conversation with an ex-client before years ago because he smelled so bad.
Yeah, man, it's hard.
It was gone on for months, and the PTs were coming up to me saying like, "Look, Dan, like our clients coming up to us saying who's that person who smells?" And on the day that I was going to tell him, he broke it to me that his washing machine had broken and he had to walk quite far to get his clothes washed. And my heart just sunk, and I was like, that's why you smell.
Did you say that to him?
No,
so
I didn't.
That's why you stink.
No, in my head I was thinking it, obviously. But I just straight away, I was like, oh, bless him. Like,
Yeah.
because he was going through a bit of a tough patch and whatnot. His mum was disabled, I think, so he was looking after her. He was a carer himself. Interesting character, lovely bloke, but just so glad I didn't actually have to have that conversation with him. I think it could be one of the most awkward things that you could tell a person.
I think so.
Oh, bad breath is another one. Mm-hmm. Mate, do you want a chewing gum? Like, do you know? Fucking.
There's no way of doing that subtly or politely.
No.
You can say it the most polite way possible. Everyone gets offended.
Yeah.
That's what I said to you. I was like, "Oh, Dan, do you want some deodorant?" You smell like really bad. I think for you would be easy because I would just say you fucking stink. Spray yourself, bro. But if it was like someone, like if someone randomly said that to you, you'd be like, oh. Like if someone said it to me, I'd shower like 5 times a day.
Oh, would you? You'd
fucking mortified.
Would you take it?
Yeah, because I don't like it. I don't like that feeling. Like I don't like that if someone else does that. But then if I then was like, oh my god, I didn't smell myself, and someone else has called me out, so it must be bad. I'd be like, I need to really like change this.
But I think you'd be able to smell it yourself.
You would, yeah. You would.
And that's the question that I always ask myself: is does this person know that his or her breath smells, or his or her body odor fucking reeks? And some people can't help it. I had a really bad sweating problem when I was in uni, right? I would literally turn up to the lectures because I had to walk up Kincoid Hill. You know, Kincoid Hill is quite big. I'd get to the top, I'd be sweating like fuck. And I would purposely sit in the back of the lecture room or the seminar room because I didn't want people seeing my sweat patches, my back sweat. I was that insecure. But I don't think I smelled. I was just drenched in, it was just water.
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of randomness, I don't know if you saw I saw the video on TikTok. I'm back on TikTok now. And one of the first videos that I saw was Eddie Hall in his Crocs sprinting up a street. I was like, what the fuck is going on here?
That's kicked off. I've seen it loads now, and loads of people have done like response videos to it. So do you know the story?
I kind of, yeah. And I think it's just if from what I understood was there's people outside his house I've heard people say they were there for hours. I've heard people say 30 minutes. I think his wife went out.
So I think a prolonged period of time.
Period of time, yeah.
Like almost like uncomfortably long. If someone parked outside my house for a long time and they were in their car looking at my house, anything more than 2 minutes is too long.
And beeping the horn as well, apparently.
Yep.
And his family was in
woke up
there.
his kids.
Yeah. And that's obviously absolutely mental in itself. Why would someone do that? And then he's gone out, ran after them, and then they've played the victim.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah. So basically, I think what I've heard is they were outside his house for like half an hour to an hour, beeping the horn, trying to look in, trying to see him, get attention. His wife went out, asked him to leave and to move on. They didn't. Eddie then went out and asked him to leave, and apparently there was some like movement and stuff, and they tried to comply, or they said at least they would. And then they didn't, and they came back, and then he went out then and started kicking off. And then when he went out and started kicking off, that's when they started filming him and all that.
Playing the victim, like...
Oh, ridiculous. Were you making my daughter cry? The guy was sitting in the car.
Oh, mate,
I'm
honestly.
like, mate, it actually, when I first watched that, I was like, whoa, this is mental. And then I looked into it more, and I was like, it's probably completely blown out of proportion. But then Eddie Hall's a fucking animal, mate.
He's also a very nice...
Yeah,
nice,
do you see his MMA fight with Mariana Pudanowski, or however you say his name?
Is he the ex-World Strongman?
Yes.
This Polish guy?
Yeah.
I used to watch him World's Strongest Man with my dad.
Mate, and he battered him. He literally threw him, gripped him, they just sort of tussled recently. Yeah, you'll get it on YouTube, right? They tussle a little bit, and it's a little bit scrappy, and Eddie's just powerful. And then he fucking grabs him and just throws him. And then he just fucking runs. And he's on top of him, just fucking pounding him then. And it's aggressive blows. Big, strong guy. Anyway, there's no way I'd fuck with Eddie Hall. And he's got a temper on him. And I'm because I got a similar temper. I just think, imagine someone parked outside your house and you're sort of a high profile character. People are beeping their horn and they're lingering outside your house and you've got a young family and a wife in there. Anything they're if someone did anything and you felt even Soph was remotely under threat, you immediately go into protection mode. And that's exactly what he did. After they've asked them to leave a couple of times and they haven't, just go into protection mode. And then Eddie's sort of default is aggression, right? Because he's fucking one of the world's strongest man, or was, and he's an animal, he's doing fighting and stuff now. So he's gone into that mode and he's just gone fuck off. And he says something I'm gonna he said something like, I'm gonna twist your head off or something.
Yeah, I saw
I
that.
was like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
You're gonna fucking twist your head off.
I
was like,
saw
"Oh."
some comments of people were saying, "Oh, you would have caught them, Eddie, if your Crocs were in sport mode because they were down." Oh, I was laughing my head off.
Yeah, and so I'm all for that, and I'm all for that
Exactly
aggression.
the
It's like
same.
warranted.
Yeah. Good on Eddie. Well done. Leading the way. Show people what fucking being a true man protecting his family is.
100%.
Every sane man would do the same, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of sane, like that whole what would you call it? I don't know. Like people who get really excited and when they see a celebrity, that whole thing, I think it's just like fucking stupid. Like we've spoke about it countless times on the podcast, like no idols, you know, and like don't look up to people. And I think it's like, you know, even people who go to be in the crowd of X Factor and shit like that. I'm like, why are you doing? Like, it's mental. It's like I couldn't think of anything worse than doing that. Same if I saw someone famous. I think there's only one famous person who I'd go up to and ask for a photo. Is it Steven Gerrard, my idol growing up?
Yeah.
I think that's the only person who I'd ever ask for a photo with. Everyone else, like, just if they're out having food, let them have their food.
Yeah.
Just let them fucking eat in peace. You know, they get so much hassle. Is there anyone that you'd ask for a photo of?
No, like it really isn't. Like I got mentoring from Dan Green. He's like an icon in the powerlifting space. And I went to when I did California trip. We went to San Francisco, and then I drove like an hour to where he's from to have one-on-one mentoring with him, pick his brains, and then just do some like lifting with him. And that was like I could definitely get like. What's the word?
Starstruck?
Yeah, I definitely get starstruck. Like I couldn't believe it was him.
Wow,
and he was
really?
just like, "Oh, hi Jordan, I'm Dan." And I was like, "Oh my god!" I was like, "I know." So I definitely got starstruck, and I got a photo with him at the end, and it was like really cool to pick his brains. But like I wouldn't be going like bothering him and following him around and stuff. And I don't think even like I trained Tim Oliphant, like famous actor. And I trained him for that movie Havoc that's on Netflix now.
Is he
Tom
the
Hardy.
guy who was on? What was that other film that he was on? The high profile Hitman, was it?
Yeah, he was the hitman.
He was the hitman on Hitman.
Yeah, so he's the main cast there.
Wow.
And like that was one of my favorite movies. And then they were like, "Oh, do you want to like, coach him?" And I was like, "Oh my god, yeah." And even then, I was like, "Oh, cool," and it's like cool to hear his stories. But I wouldn't like. He's like a friend. Like he messaged me when I did my comp. You know?
Nice.
Like just really, really cool. Like, "Oh, what are you up to?" sort of deal. And I messaged him. I was like, "Oh, your film's out now. It's #1 on Netflix in the UK." And he's like, "Oh, good to know." And then he was like, "Oh, the highlight of that for me was meeting you and Saf and spending time with you." Just like a really normal, like really nice guy. And it's like, yeah, they're just normal people, you know. So give him a break.
Yeah, I agree, mate. So on the topic of mental, it's actually we're filming this on a Thursday, knowing that it's World Mental Health Day on Monday. So I kind of wanted to make this podcast about that, really. And as someone who goes to therapy, yourself, I've never been to therapy. Would you say the gym is therapy?
It's not therapy, but it is an outlet. Like for me, it's a really good way of like exercising mood. Like therapy sort of unpacks like deeper root things that need like fixing, coping mechanisms, like default responses and stuff like that. Like therapy goes a bit deeper into like understanding the whys to your behavior and the whys to why you may feel a particular way when something happens and stuff like that. Whereas like the gym doesn't give you the whys, but for me it's like a really good way of like regulating my mood, sort of like venting stress, and just generally just like feeling good. There's only so much a gym I can do to make me good, like feel good temporarily. Whereas, sorry, I shouldn't have drunk so much Dr. Pepper. So yeah, only so much a gym you can do to make you feel good temporarily. Whereas like therapy just makes you, I don't know if it's hard, man. Like you unpack some stuff that you really don't want to like go deep into.
Really?
And it's like, you're like, "Oh, this is really heavy and hard." And then you sort of have a conversation about it, understand it, but then you need to work on it. So you're like constantly in this like I would say pit. That's really really negative. You're constantly in a state of like reflection, and it's like hard reflection. And then the gym helps with just like just bringing your mood up whilst you're in that like reflection state. So yeah, that's probably the best way I can sort of articulate it. So it, like for me, it's like a must. Like the gym massively impacts my mood, makes me feel good. It's like my sanctuary, my happy place. Is where I like feel like I develop myself. Physically, obviously, but like mentally, it does as well. It gives me a sense of like resilience and like pride. But yeah, it's very different to like it doesn't
Actual therapy,
it doesn't
like,
fix
yeah.
things.
No.
But it can make you feel good.
And that's why I asked that, is because I've heard so many people say before, gym is therapy. Gym is my therapy. And I think it comes from people who actually haven't been to therapy. Now, granted, I just said that I've never been to therapy. But what I have done is I think had a similar kind of therapy with magic mushrooms.
Yeah.
They say it's like, there was one person who was on the course with us who said that was like having 10 years of therapy in 4 hours.
Yeah.
And I can imagine what it's like, because it does bring up shit that you put in the back burner and stuff that you don't really know that affects you, stuff in your subconscious that is always with you day to day, but you don't necessarily see it. So one of mine, for example, when I was on the journey, was I was always made to feel guilty by my dad and my brother for going away to university when I was younger. My mum was ill, and it was almost like, how dare you go away to university to try and better yourself when your mother's here kind of getting ill. We're going to have to support her and whatnot. But I was like, it didn't really cross my mind, to be honest. I was a little bit selfish when I was younger, I'd say, but I was like, no, I'm going away to like better myself. I don't want to be around here and whatnot. And I was always made to feel guilty about that. Whenever we argued, it was always, you left mum here and blah, blah, blah. And it would like grate on me. And I would always think about it. And during that psychedelic session, there was a part of it when me, my brother, my mum, my dad were sitting in the living room, and I was just standing up and I was going around to all of them and I was saying, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And that went on for like, felt like 20 seconds, but I think it was for a whole song. And I think the song was probably anywhere between 6 and 7 minutes.
Wow.
So you lose all sense of time. But as soon as that happened, then I was like, guilt is gone. And since then, we've had similar conversations and arguments after that. And now I haven't got an ounce of guilt anymore, because I'm like, I needed to do what I had to do in that moment. I was 18 years old. Like, I was immature. I couldn't think how I do now back then.
Yeah.
And maybe I would have.
Would you have done something different if you had your brain now?
I'd have probably approached it differently. Just having the hard conversations sooner.
Yeah.
But when I was 18, like all I cared about was women, rugby, and the gym. I didn't care about anything else.
Yeah.
So I would have just had the harder conversations earlier, I think.
Yeah.
But that's
To change their perspective, and you would have done the same outcome, or
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'd have done exactly.
you wouldn't have not gone to uni.
Well, looking back, I wish I hadn't gone to uni, but not for that reason. For the reason that I'm not doing anything relevant now to my degree. So yeah, that's kind of the reason why I asked that. So therapy, like you sing its praises to me all the time.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the biggest thing that you've unpacked about yourself?
Understand myself, like the way I tick a little bit more, and accept it. Accept certain things about me. And once you sort of understand and accept certain things about you, then you can sort of learn to cope with them better, rather than those traits making you spiral out of control. So it's just like awareness of who you are. And then once you know who you are and you like start to understand your tendencies, you can just control them better. I think that's one. Two, just to understand the why I do things, from like childhood trauma and stuff like that. Pretty tough upbringing. So like understanding the things that I saw and experienced younger influence some of the things that I do now. And then there were certain blocks that I sort of had, like progressing in myself, that I couldn't articulate. And I was just like, I feel like this and I don't know why. And I was just sort of in this dark. Like in the dark, I was just like, I don't know. I feel like I should be wanting to do that, but I really don't want to do that, and I don't know why. I don't even know if I don't want to do that. Like it was just really confusing. And then when I had therapy, I like was like putting all that over to her, and then she just drew loads of correlations about like things I experienced, and like she's like, it's really normal you feel like that because this experience yielded this, and that experience has yielded that. I don't really want to talk about like what those things were, but the outcome was essentially like understanding the things that I experienced was shaping some of my behaviors, and it was just like, is that your behavior? Like, is that what you want to behave like, or is that just a result of something that you experience that's not actually you, but you're just sort of protecting yourself because of that? And that's essentially what the outcome was. So it was like, I actually do want to go ahead, and I do want to like understand this better, and I want to make that decision myself, but I was getting blocked by the things I experienced. So like once I had that awareness and that understanding, and I was like, I think I do, then she asked loads more questions about like me moving forward and what it would mean to me and stuff. And then it gave me clarity to be like, okay, yeah, I've got some sort of like clear understanding now of like where I want to sort of take my life. And then I just like dived into it then, and it's been the best decision I made.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, how do you feel now that you've been able to articulate those thoughts and those feelings in comparison to when you couldn't? Like, has it changed? Has it been life changing? Has it changed your life in any
Nah,
shape
it
or
hasn't
form?
been. It's definitely been life changing. With like, I don't think I'd have a business and be married and have a child if it wasn't for those like tough sessions. But there's always something. Like, this is the next thing. You know, like I'm always like almost like battling with myself. Not to feel like I'm in a bad and stable way. I'm not saying that at all. I feel pretty good about myself, but I will always have like elements of doubt, and there's elements of things that I'm like call myself up on, and like I need to do better with that. And I'll read some like self-help books and speak to my therapist a bit. Haven't had a session with her for a while, but like when we do have those conversations, it's like objectively when I reflect, I'm like, oh, there's certain things that I've potentially dropped the ball on and got complacent with that I need to sort of work on. And I just feel like once you sort of like fix, and definitely fix in inverted comments, one thing, you'll sort of take a step forward, and then there'll be other things that you just like have to sort of like deal with and approach. And it's just like a never-ending like cycle of development. That's why people always say like, I was immature, or he's grown up, or oh yeah, he's only 20 though, and when you're 30 is when you start like growing and stuff. And like ultimately the commonality with all that sort of stuff and growing up is just getting older and having more life experience. And like the more life experience you have, the more that you sort of like develop in yourself. And I just feel like that's where like therapy comes in. It's almost like a fast track ticket to try and understand yourself, develop yourself. So when you go through the path, you have you make less mistakes, and you're just a little bit more aware of who you are, what you're doing, who you're affecting, how you're affecting them, how you're affecting yourself, and yeah, just going from there. And because I've got a business and a kid, I'm really like sensitive to that now, because I don't want to do anything like in my business that could tarnish like growth. And then I obviously want to be a good example for Maxon as well, and like him see me in like a really positive light.
That growth, I think they call it wisdom, right? As you
Yeah.
get older, you just get wise because you've got so much more life experiences behind you. You've gone through so many situations that are relevant to other situations that you've experienced. You can just deal with them better.
Yeah.
I think that just comes with age, comes with
Yeah.
wisdom, comes with, like you said, life experiences.
Yeah.
And do you think there's a point where you can get to a point in your life where it's complete peace, where there's nothing, there's nothing?
I don't think so. I think I don't think so. Every sort of wise person you've spoken to, even people that are really good in this space, like very thinky and understand like human psychology, they still really work hard on themselves. I think there's always stuff that you can do to improve yourself, and I don't think you'll get to like ever get to complete contentment. You get content with who you are, but that will never stop the work that you need to do to keep like either stay in that state or improve. You know?
That's interesting. So let's go on to depression then. Okay, we spoke about it in one podcast before, where it's again, I'm not clued up. I'll start without asking. Do you think you've ever been on the cusp of depression or depressed?
I don't think so. No.
No, I'm not sure if I have as well. I think
Yeah.
I've been on the cusp.
Yeah.
I think I've been very, very close, where I could have let the dark clouds come over me and take me away.
Yeah.
But I just always ask myself the question, like, is depression a symptom of not addressing the root cause? Is it a symptom of just not having coping mechanisms to deal with it? or is it genuinely like an imbalance in the brain, or is it a combination of all of them?
I think I genuinely think clinical depression is an imbalance in the brain.
So it's almost like it's on the spectrum. Because from my understanding, when you've got that chemical balance in your brain, you've got low levels of dopamine, you've got low levels of oxytocin, serotonin, and whatnot. And I guess that comes on a spectrum anyway in life. Like I'm sure you know someone in your life who's really happy, really positive, but then there's also someone who's quite negative, quite like blunt, quite brash with their way of talking, never smiling.
Yep.
But they're not depressed; they're just miserable. You just say, oh, he's miserable.
Yeah.
So there's always there's always going to be that spectrum. But then, at what point does that spectrum go from being just miserable and just to then go into depressed?
So I think like sadness and depression are two completely different things. Like sadness is a normal human emotion that like you'll go through cycles of being happy, neutral, and sad. Everyone goes through that. Whereas I think like depression, I think is just a bit deeper. I think depression, the term depression gets used a bit willy-nilly, and people say, "Oh yeah, I'm depressed" and stuff, and it's just like you're not. You're sad. You're just a bit sad. You failed your driving test and you're upset about it. That hasn't made you depressed. You know, you're just disappointed, or you're like, you've got exams coming up and it's stressful, so your mood isn't as good. Not depressed. You should be thriving on the pressure of exams because that's a privilege. Anyway, that's another topic.
But that's a perspective as well.
That's
right?
a perspective, exactly. So I'm talking like the perspective is sadness, because sadness is an emotion, and that will exist on a spectrum. Because what will make one person sad will make another person thrive, which will make another person be unaffected, because it'll be based on experience. If you're born with the silver spoon in your mouth and you've got everything given to you, and then they're like, oh, you're not having a silver spoon today, you can have this black one, and you're like, oh, that's so sad. That'd make you upset. Whereas then give it to another person that doesn't. It's from a council estate, and they're like, "Oh, here's a spoon for you to have your shreddies." They'll be like, "Oh my god, yes, a spoon! I'm used to using my hand." Like it's again like experience and perspective. But like, so sadness will exist on that spectrum, whereas depression, I just think like is literally an imbalance. My sister and my mum are both like clinically depressed, like medicated for it, and you see it, like you experience it, and they can do everything that they can to put them in a better mood. But like as soon as they come off that medication, it is hard. Do you know what I mean? So like. And like load of my family, like I've got a history of depression in the family. So it's like, okay, is that inherited then? Is that inherited? And I've never experienced it. Like I'm lucky enough to never. I think I'd be doing those people are really bad service if I ever said I was even somewhat remotely depressed. Definitely been sad, obviously, but not depressed. And I think there's certain things you can do to maybe try and fix it and like change that. But it's the same. It's like why when people give birth and it's like postpartum depression, why do they get postpartum depression? Because there's so much hormonal change that it creates that hormonal change in their brain. Like it creates the depression part of their brain. Like it is clinical. Like it's a known diagnosed thing, postpartum depression. I don't think that's just experience. Because a lot of people are receiving the same experience as well. It's like clinical, it's what happens when you've had a baby. So I think there's like a little bit more to it.
Yeah, and I'm again not educated enough to. I can obviously have my own opinion on things, but I'm not educated enough to almost know anyone. I don't really know anyone who's actually gone through depression, if I'm honest. I think I had a client before. And again, they say you should train, eat better, look after yourself, get to bed. And this client was doing everything, but the depression was still lingering. And it's like, oh, that must be so tough.
All of these things to release dopamine. That's all it is. It's just like trying to basically just give these people like different ways in which they can, release dopamine, eat well, exercise, like meditate, sleep well, all these things that help with like that part of the brain, like real like earned dopamine, not like Instagram scrolling. And and it just doesn't help them. And then it's just like, well, what do you do then at that point? What is there,
I think we've spoken about this briefly on another podcast, but I saw a video once that changed my whole perspective on depression. And it came from a guy called Ramdas. I was trying to find the video for this podcast, but I can't for the life of me find it. He's I guess you could call him starts with P, not a psychologist. What do you call people who's
psychiatrist?
No, philosopher.
Oh.
He's a philosopher. I'm not sure if he's alive now or if he's dead, but there was this video and he was giving this speech to office employees, and he looks like a little bit of a hippie, to be honest. So he looks so out of place in this office building. But he was going around and was talking about his experience with a client before who came to him, and he or she was saying, "I'm so depressed." And he was like, "You're depressed, are you?" And he or she was like, "Yeah, I'm really, really depressed." And he said, "Well, is the noticer depressed?" And she went, "Well,
Is the what, sorry?
is the noticer depressed?"
Right.
And she said, "Well, no, the noticer is just noticing." And that for me, do you understand what I mean by that?
No.
So when you're depressed, you're almost like you're looking,
Oh, yes.
you're looking at the depression. So then that person who's looking at it, how is that person feeling?
Yeah.
And I think what he was trying to say is that sometimes you can get so involved with how you feel, and this goes for happiness, it goes for sadness, it can go for depression. And it's almost like that was an epiphany for her, because she was like, well, no, the noticer is just noticing the depression. So I'm just noticing the depression. So it was almost like by detaching from the depression and looking at it rather than being it, it just changed her perspective on it altogether.
That's sick. Yeah,
I was like, wow, that's really, really powerful. And I watched it and I was like, I couldn't stop thinking about it for about 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
And this is going back a few months now, but I was like, oh, it'd be really cool to talk about it today.
Yeah.
Because we've both had, and I think that's what psychedelics do. Like you had that experience last week where you took 2 weeks ago or whatever it was, you took some psychedelics and you had a profound experience where you realized that you perceive the world through how you want to perceive it, right? You don't have to get angry at something. You can stop and see a situation and then change your perspective on it. And I think depending on where you're at in your life, and again, I think it might be quite hard if someone is depressed. I think it's really hard to think rationally.
Yeah, of course it is.
Because you're not in that state of mind where you can reflect. So we're quite privileged that I feel quite privileged that I'm going to say this. So I'm not trying to say that I know anything about depression. I'm just explaining what I've seen from other people explaining it through their experiences. But for me, I was like, wow, I just thought it was awesome just to be like, okay, I'm not actually my depression, so do I have to let it get to me? And you can apply that to any negative emotion.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you think of that?
I think it's really powerful. I think anything that can make you like sort of detach from like yourself a little bit and think objectively about yourself is really good. And that's essentially what therapy is. They're like you explain how you feel, they challenge how you feel, and they ask questions about what you say you feel, and you give an objective or like an opinion on what you've just said. So it's almost like Jordan tells Daniel what he feels. Daniel asks Jordan a question back about that, and then you're answering about Jordan. So then you're not Jordan anymore, you know. And that's essentially what like that guy was doing. And then that like those conversations where it's like me to you to me to then someone else, which is still me, about me. It's like really like, oh, okay, I'm talking about myself now. So I'm like not myself because I'm talking about myself. It's really like, it's really mad. But it gives you a sense of clarity.
I think that's what coaching does as well, just into the fitness realm. You've got like a second opinion on stuff because you can get so bogged down with like my programming, my diet, and someone else will give you same with business as well. You can get so emotional over the decisions that you make, and someone else who you say hire, maybe you invest in them, and they go in, why are you doing that for? Like, just do it like this. That's why. Like, oh, why didn't I think? Why didn't I think of that before?
That's why established athletes have coaches, or even coaches have coaches. You know, it like removes emotion. I still get Thomas to like. I literally left him 3 voice notes this morning, reflecting about my competition performance, emotionally, so I can exercise that emotion because it's really important. Because that emotion is essentially like my feelings towards it, and then I responded to that with some more rational decision making, and then like I knew what I would say to that if someone else asked me that. Whereas I don't want to do that. I want him to tell me. I want like some reassurance. I want his opinion, and I want him to be able to like be in it with me, and then that feel of like a sense of support. And maybe he's got slightly different perspective because everyone's perspective is based on their experience, and everyone's experience of the world is different. So if someone goes through different coaching pathways, their lens is going to be heightened in certain areas in which the other coach may not have a lens in. So then when you're like you're coaching the same sport, you're trying to get the same outcome, but different perspectives have different views. And those different views can just sort of like make you feel a certain way. Or it can, like he might say something and I'll be like, oh, do you know what? I never gave that much thought. You know, he might be like, yeah, you've got Maxim, you've got a business, Maxon's teething, he hasn't been sleeping well, your circumstance for performance is actually not that ideal right now. And I might just be like, oh yeah, I forgot about that because I'm living that. You know what I mean? So like they'll just give another a point, or it could be something about in relation to training. It could be like, oh yeah, when you're performing your accessory movements, for example, are you making sure that this has relevance to this, and is that impacting this, and did you do this, this, and this? And I might be so caught up in all of the shit that I'm doing that I'm like, no, I didn't give it that much attention. And he's like, okay, that's what we're going to do moving forward. And now it ends up getting an objective plan. So like when you offload on people and tell people things, and it just gives you they give you their perspective from their experience, and then that can broaden your like scope of knowledge a little bit more as well, both in the training sense and in like a sort of societal sense.
How important is it then to have a strong support network, whether it's with your mental health, whether it's with your training? Because I think it's one of the most important things that you can have is someone to bounce ideas from, someone to validate your feelings, someone to challenge you as well
100%.
on what you're going through. I think coaching is not just macros and a training plan.
Yeah.
Do you know? And I think that's a mistake that some people make. It's community as well.
Yeah,
like
100%.
we are creatures that thrive from being in a community.
Yeah.
And if you haven't got those things in place, like I feel really fortunate. I've got so many, I say so many friends. I've probably got 4 or 5 friends I can hang my hat on. I call them the 2 a.m. friends.
Yeah.
Where if something goes wrong at 2 a.m., I can call them and they'll be there. And you're definitely one of those.
When I text back.
When you text back, yeah, you probably wouldn't even answer the fucking phone. But I think so many men are missing that these days. I genuinely think that there's a lot of men who haven't got that support network.
Yeah.
And even if they do, it's all about like, oh, lagers, fucking beer. Like it's all about banter. There's no deep chats. There's no deep connections. And I find that quite sad.
Yeah.
Because when do you ever get a chance to speak about things properly? And even if you do, you feel like it's just always banter. You know? It's like, no, like you're meant to have these chats. Like that's why women have got it so right. They talk about their emotions. And we've had to and when I say we, I mean men in general, have really had to work hard over the last 10 years to change generations of just not talking.
Yeah.
Just don't talk about that.
Yeah.
You know,
it's so funny. Like it's definitely generational. Speak to some people who are like older than us, even just only like 10, 15 years older than us. And they're exactly the same. Just like closed books, you know. Oh, I've never even thought of like that before. Or like I love it when I ask these types of people some questions and they give me like an answer and I'll say stuff like, yeah, you don't really mean that though, do you? And then they get really jarred by the response. And I was just like, no, answer the question again. And I'll make it light and I'll smile. I was like, answer it again, be honest. And then their answer slightly changes. And you're like, okay, there's like 20% of truth there now, rather than just like giving me a response to brush it off and not actually think.
Telling you what you wanted to hear, just so the conversation can move on.
So I do it all the time. Like I love it when I ask people questions or people say stuff to me. And if it doesn't hold much substance in what they're saying, then I'll ask them again. Do it with my clients. They'll say like, I'm like, oh, even stupid things, they'll be like, oh, it's feeling, I was feeling quite heavy today. I think I won't be able to do 3 sets. And I'm like, how did you arrive at that? Like, why can't you do 3 sets? You've only done your second warm up. You haven't even got to the working set yet. You're not even at a weight that's relevant to inform you what that top set's going to be yet. And that's just like, and you're already creating an exit strategy. That's just like, what are you trying to protect? And then they're like, I was just like, how about you just sort of like stay in tune with your body? How about you just bring a little bit more mental tenacity to the next warm-up and you just like focus a little bit more because I know you want to do the weight that I've prescribed, you know? And then they're like, all right, okay. And I was just like, why did you create an exit strategy for? And it's just like, I don't know, you know? It's default. It's like avoiding failure. I don't want to fail, so I'll avoid it. Yeah. And it's just like change the default. That's not going to serve you well in the long term, training related now. It's not going to serve you well in the long term. Because when shit gets heavy, what are you going to do? You're going to run away. It's just like these are the times that actually like mold your character. And these are the times that actually make you like become a better lifter. You know, if you shy away from this, you just stall progress.
I think it's really important, and this is one of the reasons why we started this podcast, is to open up discourse and to just literally put our opinions out there. And if anyone ever comments, or if anyone ever wants to message you or me, like with a different opinion, like
love it.
Say it.
Literally
like,
love it.
We're just other people on the sides of the screen. Try not to look at it as like the screen and the person. Like we are real people behind like an Instagram profile. And if you've ever got questions, guys, just like ask us, because we're more than happy to cover those topics in the podcast, go into things in a bit deeper. And again, please challenge us on anything that we say, because I think it's such a good place to be, where you can take on other people's information, not get offended by it, but just observe it and be like, okay, this is how this person feels about something. Why do they think like that?
Yeah.
How have they come to that conclusion? Maybe there's, maybe I don't agree with them, but maybe there's something that I can take from their knowledge or from that something that they've said, and I can, work it in somehow or learn from it. Right?
no.
Like you said, the industry does not do that at all. It's black and white. This is fact. This is it. End of discussion. And that goes for politics. It goes for fucking most things in the world. And it's fucking sad.
Yeah, it's wild, isn't it?
It's wild. But imagine going into politics being like, I'm open for discussion. Like, you would get no votes.
Yeah.
Because the general public it's like a film, isn't it? They like animosity. They like bad news sells, good news doesn't. We're just driven by fear. We're driven by absolutes. We're driven by black and white thinking. That's what has got us here today. And it's so hardwired in our DNA. It's not going to change.
Yeah.
And when you do, and when you are able to recognize that and have a conversation with someone and go, okay, I'm going to listen to this person. I think that is what they call, there's a word for it. It's like, I guess you could call it wisdom, when you're like able to listen to other people. Ego's down. You don't have to be right. You don't have to be right all the time. Like you said, someone asks you a question. Sorry, I don't actually know the answer. I think that's like one of the best coaching in the world. Is just not saying something just for the sake of it.
I know.
It's mad, isn't it?
It's like, and also I'll always listen to people because it reaffirms my beliefs. Like, there's loads of like these youngsters that are like less experienced in the space, and regardless of their experience level, if they say something, I listen, and I'm like, what do I actually think about what they're saying? And then, like, a lot of the time, I'm like, oh, you're not experienced enough. Like, practical application doesn't quite work like that, or it's like, oh, you're missing the woods from the trees. Is that saying?
Missing the forest for the trees.
Forest from the trees, yeah. And I'm just like, oh, it's like really like oversimplified thought process. Or someone will have like a guy I was talking to at a competition was like, my arms are always cooked from when I get into my benching. And I was like, oh, have you ever benched first and then squatted after? So his arms are cooked from squatting, which affects his bench training. And he's like, no, because I don't do that in competition. And I was just like, you don't go bench and then squat? He's just like, so he basically trains he plans his training week like it's a competition. It's almost like the same argument for like YSBD days. People like to do them. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I was like, do you think that's a little bit zoomed in? And he's like, what do you mean? Because I'd love to challenge that. And I was like, oh, that's quite zoomed in, isn't it? It's like very like specific, like very, very specific present viewpoint. I was like, what if you zoom out? And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, what if you zoomed out and you benched first and then squatted after, and then your arms were fresher? Then over a series of blocks of training, you get more quality work. You'd be in less pain, and then therefore you'd be able to handle more volume, more intensity in your bench, create a better strength stimulus, and then when you have to be specific in a competition, you can use the strategies that you're using right now, but know that you've got like way more like quality training behind you, and you've been in less pain, and because you've been in less pain, maybe there's less build-up in inflammatory, and maybe you'd be in a better condition than you are now. I was like, that's anecdotal, and it's just a different perspective. And he looked at me and he was just like, oh, I couldn't do that mentally. And that's all he said. Couldn't do that mentally. I just went, fair enough. And it's just like basically took all my information, knew it made sense, and then just sort of completely dismissed it and was just like, I just couldn't do that. And I was just like, yeah, fine, And the only reason I gave that viewpoint is because he was pretty much asking for it. Like, we were having a conversation back and forth about like strategies and stuff, and asking each other. Otherwise, I just tend to leave people to it. But it's really interesting how people have such a like zoomed in lens with stuff like that, like SBD days. It's like, I've got to do an SBD day because it's like super specific to the day. I was like, is it? I was like, are you going to train in the gym for 6 hours, the same duration as a comp? Are you going to be like resting the same as you do in a competition?
Every day, every session?
Yeah, it's just like you can be like, super, super, super specific, but you're not going to be as specific to the competition, And it's just like, that means that every time you deadlift, you're always going to be fatigued, Like, are you actually more fatigued at the end of a competition when you're deadlifting, and does that like correlate to your training numbers? And it's just like, well, like no, because like I've always hit, like when I was doing this comp, my last heavy deadlift was 310, and I pulled 317 in comp, and it wasn't like, and I was always deadlifting on its own day, so I was always fresh, and I still gained plus 7.5 kilos from my last heavy pull. Whereas the argument would be like, oh yeah, but you're always training your deadlift fresh, you're not training it fatigued. It's just like, yeah, but you're looking at it as like singular sessions. I'm looking at it as the phase of peaking. I'm actually dissipating all that fatigue so I can get that super compensation at the end. And again, it's like super zoomed in instead of zoomed out. But it's funny how people can justify things and make it sound good, to justify their arguments, And that's the industry, like it's just full of anecdotal sort of experience and just full of opinions. There's no manual on how to squat, bench, and deadlift. There's like little programming manuals that are kicking around, but there's loads of different programming styles. And then everyone's like, yeah, this is the way, this is the way, this is the way. Actually, they're all the way as long as you follow progressive overload. But then it's just like some ways are better than others and be a little bit more efficient for that.
Yeah.
But people are just fucking super fixated.
Yeah, like
interesting.
What you mentioned there about missing the forest for the trees, I call it bloke down the pub syndrome, where you'll get like a 40% body fat man speaking about like how to lose weight, and he's like, it's fucking easy, calorie deficit, 10,000 steps a day, go to the gym a few times a week. It's like, that's massive oversimplification, because let's say, for example, you had 200 test subjects and they went to a forest where the conditions were perfect to lose fat. 100 of them were given like a drug that got rid of hunger, that got rid of emotions, that got rid of limiting belief and the sense of self. Or the 100 were given a placebo. Out of those 200, or the 100, sorry, that got given that injection, they would lose fat because it would take out all of the emotions as long as they were given the right, the right diet, training, and steps. But then if the other 100 who had the placebo were given the exact same process, probably a lot of them wouldn't finish the whole, let's say it was run for 90 days, they wouldn't finish the 90 days because their emotions would come into play, hunger would come into play. So even though, things are simplified, calorie deficit is how you lose weight, get your steps in, train to preserve your muscle tissue. There's so many moving parts. Like, humans are so complex. And I call it, that oversimplification is like, bro, you're right, but in practice, in real life, that stuff just doesn't work. And it goes back to what you said about every program does work, but some of them, same goes with every diet, but some of them just make so much more sense in terms of like lifestyle, in terms of how we live, enjoyment. You have to take all those things into consideration.
100%. We're not robots.
No.
Like you can do all that. Yeah, it works if you're a robot. Like you said, you do that drug, they basically turn into robots, and you can get the outcome. Humans aren't robots. There's so many factors. So there's so much more about like psychological tenacity and training now that I think is far more important now. Like me and Thomas were talking about like descent speed on like bench press the other day, and it was just like correlations between people descending faster than not, or people that have like a built-in speed, because you do move in like a built-in speed if you're trying to move fast. Some people move fast, some people move slow, sort of like predetermined. But like if someone is like moving quicker, it's just like they can feel stronger. It's like, why do they feel stronger? And it's nothing to do with like kinetic stored energy or anything like that. It's just like if they're bringing it down faster, they're like attacking the weight more, which means like psychologically they're a little bit more like on. And it's just like that is allowing them to express more. And it's just like interesting. It's just like all of the science that you can bring into it, elastic stored energy and like, eccentric loading and, like really loading
Maintaining
tissues and stuff. Yeah, like all this sort of stuff. And it's just like, they're just psychologically a little bit more on.
Yeah.
So then they just press a little harder and they move a bit faster and they can yield a little bit more strength, And it's just like, wow, I wonder how much of this stuff can just be tapped just by that sort of like scenario is like reserved for obviously more elite people. They're a little bit more established with their patterns and stuff like that. But it's like, how many more people can like really like unlock like more of their strength just by psychology, like just by like tapping into a state that allows them to be a little bit more on, So it's really interesting.
It's that thing of like, I genuinely believe, and I made a post about it this week, if more people worked on their mind rather than their fucking macro split and whether they should be doing push-pull legs or upper-lower split, like all of these things, those programs and diets will work. Like pick one, but do it consistently and work in your mind, work on your patience, work on your fucking consistency, work on your mental tenacity, work on all of those mindset things rather than fucking changing your macro split every week because you're not losing weight. It's like fucking hell.
Do the big rocks and actually put some effort into the big rocks.
And do them well and do them consistently, and you will see change, even if you follow the worst program and the worst diet in the world.
But there's something to be said for that. Like a subpar program done well or done with intent is better than the best program in the world done average.
Yeah.
And I'd fall on my sword about that. End of
Anyway,
day?
yeah, end of day. Thanks, guys,
For no questions?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for listening, and just remember, if me and George, we know a little bit about mental health, but not as much as a professional.
Yeah.
So if you are watching this and you've been struggling, reach out to a professional. There's lots of people online that can help these days. So yeah, make sure you get in contact with them. Don't message us. See you soon.
Yeah.